Good afternoon, everyone. I am so thrilled and excited to welcome you to the awards ceremony for the Climate College. This is sort of a really exciting and I just never thought this day would happen. But we not only together as a group of Fish and Wildlife staff and with our partners put together a really wonderful Climate College, but we also had just an amazing number of you step up to not only come to the lectures, but to actually do projects. So this is a really special day that we have that we really want to celebrate you, to thank you, and to just encourage you to keep going. So this day is all about you. And we also have some people on the WebEx, on the phone. There's a lot of our participants in project and folks who did projects who are not able to be here with us, but we want to also celebrate them and acknowledge them. So just to give you a little idea of how we're planning this awards ceremony is we have Director Bonham here to give us a welcome. And I'll give a real short kind of summary of the college so you know kind of how everything rolled out. And and then Whitney will talk about the project descriptions that you all did, and if your name is called, we'll ask you to come up and you can get your certificate. And then after we kind of go through some closing remarks from Chief Deputy Kevin Hunting, then we'll meet and mingle. So you have a chance to kind of talk with each other, see some of our executive staff, and I have cake and berries, and I realized I brought water and no cups. So I will work on that. Otherwise, we'll be a communal group like in India where you just hold the bottle over your mouth and you pour it in. But anyway, with that, I would like to turn it over to our director. And just again, if it wasn't for our director and for our chief deputy who was willing to give us the green light to do this, this couldn't have happened. So we owe a big debt of gratitude to both of them for that. So, heck.
I've been thinking going down to the photo place and getting my photo changed. I was in Washington, D.C. last week, and I was at the Department of the Interior, and the new Secretary of the Interior, Sally Jewell's photo at the entrance is her in hiking clothes, right below President Obama in his suit. So I made a note to myself, I got to think about changing mine. It can happen if you have a dream. And in some respect, I think Whitney and Amber had a dream, so that's my segue. And I don't think Kevin and I actually deserve much, if any, credit here. It's Amber and Whitney and those in our department who wanted to spend some time on this topic. And it's a topic for me that I got to confess is causing more and more concern each day. You know, it's becoming personal. We just, at the commission level, grappled with what we may or may not want to do with American pica. And one of the risks for that species is a warming climate, but on the other hand, we have a lot of our information based on forecasting models that predict an impact 100 years from now, whereas the population right now is stable and abundant. And sorting through these complex and kind of tension-ridden issues is challenging. We have the greatest biodiversity of any of the 50 states, a list I'm proud to be at the top of, but a list I'm not proud to be at the top of is when you add salmon to all of our other native species, we're at the top of the list in the nation in loss of biodiversity. And our mission and achievement of that mission is only going to get harder with a warming climate. The other thing I'll say is, I was back east last week. I had dinner with some friends who were talking to me about a TED Talk they saw, and they were really imparting to me in what they had viewed that a lot of our more progressive partners in industry are kind of moving a step away from the mantra that your customer is first and moving instead to a commitment that your employees are first. And that if you take care of your employees, nurture them, provide mentoring and professional development, in the long run you'll have a sustainable entity which in turn is doing better by the customer. I think things like Climate College and what Carol does at OTD are all about trying to do better by you, do more right by you. So it's been a great pleasure to be involved in this, and I look forward to learning about the projects. And I was told there'd only be a couple of people here, so I was counting on a lot of cake and soda, but there's easily 20 or 30 in the room, so, you know. Okay. So thank you. I was here about 10 months ago when you started, and this is a great turnout here for the end, so congratulations.
So So I was trying to emulate Chuck when he always has a really nice kind of segue that makes everybody laugh, and I thought, what is that Kevin Costner movie, If You Build It, They Will Come? I'm like, I don't think I can actually put that picture of Kevin Costner up there, but I think that's what the Climate College was really about, is we talked about how are we going to provide the tools and resources for our staff to start those conversations at a staff level about climate change so that we can support each other and build a community around climate change. And that was really what sort of inspired this idea of the Climate College, was to provide that basic foundation of knowledge, to begin those discussions so that you start thinking about it and integrating it into what you do, and that we start to learn to support each other and talk to each other about it. So that was really what the intent of this was. And I think the other really important piece that makes our Climate College unique from other places is that it wasn't just for our staff. It was built for our staff, but we invited all of our partners to the table. This is a group effort. This is about building a community around climate change, and I think that we've really been successful. And I think when you see the projects, you'll really see that. We ended up with a total of 348 people participating in the college and 23 projects submitted. And I know there's more rolling in because people are still emailing us, wait, I've got it, it's coming, and they want to put it in, so we're taking them. But we have 23 projects, 19 of those are Fish and Wildlife staff and 8 partners. We ended up with 9 lectures and guest speakers who donated their time and energy to also not only do the lectures but talk with our staff afterwards, and have also fostered some real connections between other organizations in our department, and one very happy Climate College team. And there is more Climate College to come. We are working to put together a Climate College that's focused around marine issues, but also working with some tribal partners so that it'll be, each lecture will be designed with 2 speakers, so you'll have a topic, say, around ocean acidification, but you'll also have the tribal perspective. So we're bringing that in again to start to build that community, start those discussions together as we move forward. So look forward to that later. I won't tell you when. We owe also a very special thanks to all of our stakeholders. We had a small group of stakeholders who came together to envision what this Climate College would look like, and without them sitting down and rolling up their sleeves and thinking about that, we would have had a hard time getting this off the ground. But we also have some staff who went above and beyond to make this successful. Particularly, I owe some thanks, a lot of thanks to Tom Lupo, Carol Smith, Steve Shanig, and Jordan Traverso for giving us their staff time. And Carol spent a lot of time with us talking this through, but it was really Matt and Adam and Jason who really, if they were not working with us on this, these things would not have happened. If we didn't have the logistics support and we didn't have the registration support, we would have been, Whitney and I, out in the wilderness by ourselves. So again, we owe a special thanks to those people behind the scenes for doing that. So with that, we can get to the fun part. Whitney is going to talk about our projects, and we can start to celebrate all of you.
Thank you. So I am going to go through the list of our award recipients, and these are the folks that made it all the way through the course and submitted a project at the end. And there was really a lot of great work that was done, so I'm really excited to get to share that with you today. So I'm going to go through the projects one by one, and I know a lot of people are joining us remotely, but if you are here in person, when your name is called, please come up to the front and receive your certificate. And I'm going to go ahead and keep rolling through the slides, and if we could hold all applause till the end, that would be great, kind of help keep us on time here. So just like in college, we are going to do this in alphabetical order. So I will be starting with Erin Aquino Carhart. And Erin is with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and she created a poster, Can CTS Take the Heat? The Implications of Climate Change on California Tiger Salamander Recovery. And Erin's poster covers the climate impacts to the salamander, the vulnerability of that species to climate change, and she also developed some recommended adaptation actions that we can take to safeguard this species into the future. Next, we have Lana Adler, also with Fish and Wildlife, and Lana wrote a paper called Climate Change Impacts to the Amargosa River Vole. And this paper describes the impacts to this species, and she also came up with some recommended management actions for addressing the threats that she had identified. Paleo Alvarez is one of our partners with the Defenders of Wildlife, and Paleo created a web page called Climate Change and California Rangelands, Impacts, Mitigation, and Adaptation. And the web page is currently under development, but it will include research articles and technical information on climate impacts to California rangelands, and also some strategies for mitigation and adaptation. Next is Debbie Azeltine-Nielsen, also with the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And Debbie carried out a planning exercise where she talked about, or she went through some of her various climate change activities and identified next steps. So this is just a snapshot of some of the material that she submitted where she has her activities and some recent tasks, and then the steps that she's identified to keep moving forward and keep addressing climate change in her work. Next is Danny Boudreau with the Tijuana River National Estuarine Research Reserve Coastal Training Program. And Danny's project was called Using the Web to Connect Stakeholders with the Climate Understanding and Resilience in the River Valley Project, which I like to call CURV. I don't know if that's actually how they refer to it, but I'm going to go with CURV. So she created this web page to try and increase awareness about the CURV project by working with us to feature this project as one of our climate change adaptation case studies. So we're working on this now. And she's hoping that this will kind of inform some of their local collaborators and also the general public on some of the climate change efforts being undertaken by this research reserve. Next is Leslie Bryan with the Western Shasta Resource Conservation District. And Leslie's project was the Forest and Water Climate Adaptation, a plan for Shasta County, California. And Leslie was the lead on development of the Western Shasta County's adaptation plan. And the entire document was completed in January of 2013, and it was revised here just in April. And the whole plan can now be found online. Next is Erin Chappell. She's with the California Department of Water Resources. And Erin worked on an outreach piece called the Climate Change Resource Guide, California's Climate, Water, and Ecosystems. And the purpose of the guide was to support our outreach efforts here at the department and also at DWR by developing this general resource guide for resource managers and their staff to help them identify some of the climate impacts, potential climate impacts they could be dealing with, and identify some adaptation strategies to address those impacts. And the resource guide is going to discuss the potential impacts of climate change on California's water resources and then how that in turn will impact our ecosystems. Next is Jean Chen with the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And Jean wrote a paper called The Impacts of Climate Change on California Tiger Salamanders and Possible Permitting and Management Responses. Also in her paper, Jeannie talked about how we can work with our partners to coordinate our responses to help protect this species well into the future. Next is Laura Drath, also with the department. And Laura gave a number of different presentations and also created a poster called Climate Education for All Ages. So we didn't get it hung up in time. So Laura incorporated climate change into two of the biggest non-tour programs at the Nimitz Fish Hatchery, their Spring Break Day Camp and Toddler Time. And so some of the pictures that you see here are of Laura and her colleagues reading from the Fever book series, Fever on the Land and Earth's Fever, and they are a kind of climate change book series for children. Next is Sarah Estrella, Melissa Riley, and Laureen Thompson, and they are also with the department, and they worked together on a presentation called Two Plans, Climate Change and Sensitive Species in the Sassoon. And this presentation was given at the Grizzly Island Wildlife Area, and they talked about the Bay Delta Conservation Plan and the Sassoon Marsh Habitat Management, Preservation, and Restoration Plan, both of which include long-term plans for tidal and other types of restoration in Sassoon Marsh. And so they talked about climate change and in particular sea level rise and how that will affect the marsh and also these different planning efforts. And then they also talked about how endangered and other sensitive fish and wildlife species will be affected. Next is Holly Gellerman, who is with OSPR here at the department. And Holly is working with our partners on a collaborative project. She is the representative from the department on a working group for the Gulf of the Farallones National Marine Sanctuary Ocean Climate Indicators. And she is working with them to develop a monitoring inventory and plan for climate change in the North Central California coast and ocean. Next is David German with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and David conducted a literature review and wrote a paper on climate change impacts to bighorn sheep species. And he did this for all across California, but also with a specific focus on the Sierra Nevada. And David posed a lot of really thoughtful questions about how we really interpret these effects and what they mean for our management efforts. Next is Dr. Robert Kamansky, and Dr. Kamansky is a member of our climate change stakeholder group. And he has created a water-wise food garden that he shares with his community in Upland to help raise awareness about the issues of climate change and sustainability. And these are some of the pictures that he provided to us of his garden. So next we have Gordon Leppick, who is with the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And Gordon is working on integrating climate change into the department's Northern Region Wetland and Riparian Conservation Technical Memorandum. And this is an ongoing project, and it's one of the many ways that I know Gordon is working on addressing climate change in his work. And Gordon, you may also recognize, is one of our guest speakers from Lecture 9 on DFW testimonials. Next we have Laura Mack. Laura is with Open Neighborhoods, and she is working on a collaborative project with others to develop sustainable alternatives to conventional power distribution stations of energy conservation strategies. And this is a team research project where they examine the feasibility of sustainable alternatives to conventional power distribution stations. And they're using a current station in a construction project in LA as a case study. Next we have Margaret Mantor and Billy Wilson with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and our project was titled Partnering with UC Davis Students to Assess Threatened and Endangered Species Responses to Climate Change. And so they teamed up with a professor at UC Davis in the Department of Plant Sciences to help facilitate a graduate course in which the students are going to be asked to identify a CISA-listed species and then research the climate change impacts to that species. And they will submit a paper to the department at the end of the quarter. And so Margaret and Billy have submitted the assignment description that will be distributed to the students later this year. And that's what's shown here on the screen. Next we have Diane Mastelier. She created a poster on the effects of climate change on the Mojave Desert. And she had an emphasis on Joshua tree, red brome, and the desert tortoise. And I believe this is helping to inform the work of Diane and some of her colleagues on the Desert Renewable Energy Conservation Plan. Margaret Moylov and Eloise Tavares are with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and they also created a poster, CDFW Combating the Spread of Aquatic Invasive Species. And in this poster, they talk about the interactions between climate change and invasive species and how that might be exacerbated in the future, and they've identified some ways to raise awareness about this issue. Next, we have Josh Nicholas with the department, and Josh's project is called Today's Virtual Office for Tomorrow's Fish and Wildlife. And Josh created a website with all kinds of information on it, including a web page on climate change, with the idea that by connecting staff from different parts of the state to a shared project or goal, that the department can really leverage its knowledge-based resources anywhere they're needed in real time without the need for travel or a centralized office location, thereby saving the department money, reducing our emissions, and also focusing on sustainable work practices. And it's a really great site that he's put together. Next we have Betsy Radke, and Betsy is with the Benicia Unified School District, Benicia Water Education Program, and BrickSpace. And Betsy gave a presentation for an AP Environmental Science class at Benicia High School, and the presentation consisted of 4 parts. She did a before and after survey that was filled out by the students. She provided updates on the status of climate change, focusing on California and the Bay Area. She gave them information about climate-smart decision-making and how to keep a positive attitude. And then she also talked about specific information on the aspects of life in the environmental field and how to prepare for a career. And Betsy also provided those survey results to us, which were really interesting to look through. Next we have Kevin Schaefer, who's with the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And Kevin developed a plan for integrating climate change into DFW anadromous programs. He laid out how he will improve or initiate climate change elements in a few key projects, such as the Fisheries Restoration Grant Program, Coastal Monitoring Program, the revision of the State Wildlife Action Plan, and the Steelhead and Salmon Vision. Next we have Aaron Tennant, who is with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and Aaron integrated climate change into land management planning using Pleasant Valley Ecological Reserve as an example. And Aaron came up with this really great basic template for the climate change section of a land management plan that includes both the potential impacts from climate change as well as potential adaptation strategies. And last but not least, we have Jeanette Wiseman with CH2M Hill. Jeanette wrote a paper on the potential effects of sea level rise on suitable shorebird habitat around the San Francisco Bay. And it was a really great research paper, and it will be a very good resource. And in it, she addresses some of the challenges that these habitats will face in an uncertain future. So that is a list of our award recipients. Thank you all again for your phenomenal work. It was really a pleasure to go through these projects and see what you had done. At this point, I'll turn it over to Chief Deputy Director Hunting, who will say a few words and close us out.
I think first we should give everybody Thanks, you guys. I want to echo what Chuck said, first of all. We didn't do anything. It's really, these people that did it all. So, Amber, Whitney, thanks for the great idea, excellent execution, and, bringing it to the department. I really appreciate that. And I heard there was a dozen or so projects that we were going to take a look at today, and, through the course of the classes, I was hearing about project work, but I have to say, I'm just amazed at how high quality these projects are, the diversity of the projects, and how well a lot of these will, integrate directly into our daily jobs. I mean, it's the land management planning project is great. I've been thinking a lot about how to integrate, tangible things into our land management planning process. Some of the T&E work, T&E species work that I saw in these, especially the tiger salamander, we've been struggling with that. So, I mean, excellent job to you guys. I just can't say enough about how impressed I am with the quality of these projects. So just a couple of words to kind of close this out. I work pretty closely with our partners in the western states on a couple of different fronts. And, I began, we were in the planning phase of this class when I started hearing about, you guys are going to do a climate college. Sounds great. What's that? What does climate college mean? And I wasn't clear, and I asked Amber and Whitney, and come back and explain it to them. And, fast forward to last week, I was with my colleagues from other states, and, they're hearing about this climate college in real positive and meaningful ways. I mean, now the questions are, is that something that we could probably do in our state? I mean, this is really, they're just hearing, phenomenal things about the quality of the classes and the impact on our staff. I mean, that's been one thing that I think has been a big positive in this, is just how well the positive impact has had on our staff. I hear it internally and externally. So, I just want to thank you for participating in the program. I think Amber mentioned at one point, when we first launched this, we were kind of like, anybody going to come? And, we exceeded I think it's safe to say we greatly exceeded our expectations as far as participation, and certainly mine as far as the quality of the offerings, the class offerings, but also the project. So thank you so much for making this a success. It's really, it's about you guys, and there seems to be a common thread in all of our talks, and I want to make sure I close with it too. Special thanks to Carol at OTD. She's all about staff development, all about leadership development in our department, and these kinds of courses are just better because she gets involved with them. So thanks everybody. Really appreciate coming today and for the good work.
So now we can eat cake and talk and mingle.
Yes, I have a quick question. Some of the papers sounded really fascinating. Are you planning on putting them up on the website?
Absolutely. We're trying to create kind of a climate library that we can continue.
Yes.
We will be posting them. We're creating a climate library, so everything that you saw, we just have to get kind of final okays that they're allowed to be public, but if they can't be, we can put them internally on the internet. But the idea is we continue to build this library of information that everyone has access to. So if there's something that comes up in your work, you've got somebody's reference paper or a poster or something to look at. So that's the intent.
And before we go to cake, and there may be other questions which are for Amber, and there's one last round of applause. She'll probably not appreciate me getting ready to embarrass her, but y'all may know that Amber's heading on to kind of lead climate work upstairs at the agency. Great loss for us, big gain for agency. we are, of the 50 states, and Kevin and I have a chance, Chief Carrion, to see our direct counterparts in the other 49. We are the leading state Fish and Wildlife agency on climate change, and it's because of AMBER. And then AMBER brought on Whitney, and they've run a program over the last couple of years which has put us back up at that national preeminent level. So shoes will never be able to fill, but a big round of applause and thank you to AMBER.
Now that my face is really red and hot. Thanks, everybody. Are there any other questions you guys have? So we can use, we have a whole half hour to just, I'm going to go look for cups, but to just spend some time with each other and, to kind of talk with some of the other cohorts. You have a lot of our executive leadership here who are, really supportive of the work of the students in the Climate College. So we have some time to kind of just spend together. So thank you again for some phenomenal projects. Thank you for those who are able to be here with us today and get your certificate. Thank you for all your work. And thank you for the congratulations. I am going to be upstairs, but my heart is always here. So you're still going to see me. I already told somebody I'm going to come downstairs for refuge. It's going to be my safe place. No, but I'm really excited about the new position. But again, I always have a special love in my heart for this department. So thank you, everyone. So let's eat cake.